Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato, and da, 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 da. You know that music? Da, 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 da. The Giants have won a football game in the 2023 season to get to 2-5. It's unbelievable, Nick. They've won a football game. We're going to let people come in. I'm going to tweet out the link, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Giants tonight, as we've done on these newer versions of these live reaction shows, at least over the last 2 weeks, has been we'll get to your questions. If you use the super chat function, usually takes one person to get the ball rolling. If you use the super chat function, we will answer your questions as they come in. But tonight there's a lot to talk about, so I'm happy to give a little bit of time to let people come into the chat. I see a few people in now, more usually trickle in along the way, Nick, but there's a lot to talk about tonight first and even throughout. So we're going to do a little bit of both. I know some people said they want to hear more of the analysis in the reaction show in addition to the questions. So trying to get through everything, Nick. But after this victory today, Nick, the Giants are now somehow just 1.5 games back from the wild card spot. Should be a half game back, if not for that Bills game where Darren Waller, if he wasn't held, was scoring that touchdown. I know that. But also, Tyrod Taylor doesn't check into that run, Nick. They probably don't need that touchdown. The Giants win anyway in that game. So just crazy. The Giants could easily be 3-4 right now. And either way, though, they're 1.5 games back in the wild card today with this victory, Nick. So, I mean, look, there's a lot to talk about in this one, but it all starts, I think, with the Giants defense dominant in this game. They didn't give up a single drive in this game. Where's that stat? They didn't give up a single drive in this game of more than 31 yards on offense. Still the final drives that ended in turnover on downs by the Washington football team. Washington scored its only touchdown, Nick, on a muff punt by Sterling Shepard inside their Giants' own 15-yard line. Other than that, just absolutely dominant performance. Defensive front. This is what it looks like when you're the team that dominates the trenches, like the Giants defensive line did against the Washington offensive line here in this game. Finally, we saw Dexter Lawrence get 2 sacks, Nick. Finally, we saw Dexter Lawrence not have to deal with double teams the entire game. And guess what? A lot of people were pissed the Giants for letting Nick Gates go. I get it. He's good depth, but Nick Gates, we saw today why the Giants let him go, because he doesn't handle Dexter Lawrence, and he can't handle Dexter Lawrence without holding or allowing sacks. And he wasn't the only dominant one on the Giants defensive line in this game, and Giants defense in general. A lot to talk about, Nick. I don't know where you want to start or what you want to start with, but look, like I said, 1.5 games back. The Giants are back in this thing, Nick.
The Giants are right back in this thing, and you already started it, man, with the New York Giants defense, because that's where we have to start. And there's so much to get into, as you already discussed. Look, and this is not taking anything away from the Giants defense, but the Washington football team, whatever the hell their name is right now, their pipes are rusted, they're corroded, they're falling apart, and the pressure just made them crumble because Wink Martindale dialed the pressure up, Dan. He brought that Pete, man. I think they pressured Sam Howell or sent the blitz on like 58% of his dropbacks. I think I saw that stat per Jordan Raanan of ESPN Analytics, just got after him. And one of the reasons why Nick Gates had to be isolated against Dexter Lawrence wasn't just because Eric Bieniemy in Washington was like, you know what? I want Nick Gates to handle Dexter Lawrence all by himself. No, it's because they were crowding the line of scrimmage. They were stopping Washington on 1st and 2nd downs, forcing these 3rd and long situations where Wink Martindale could overload one side, force a half slide or a full slide to one direction, and then just blitz everyone from the other side. When you can align 8 guys on the line of scrimmage, Dan, you can do so many funky things. And there's a lot of talk about the positionless defense. When you have a lot of players, though, who are good against the run, if they do decide to run, can drop way back into coverage and can do so many different things, it allows you to crowd the line of scrimmage and then play man coverage out of it, and then play zone out of it, then play match out of it, then send them on the blitz. And that's how you have sacks from guys like Jason Pinnock and things like that. So the entire Giants game plan on defense was excellent, and it was executed very well by the players. So I would just want to clap for Wink Martindale right there.
Yeah, we really should clap for Wink Martindale. There's a lot of people discussing prior to these last 2 weeks about Wink, like, is he gone? Did he lose his touch? Is he really even that good at all? I think we see that, yeah, there might be some cold stretches of football for the Giants defense, but Wink Martindale still got it, man. Like, you can tell this dude understands how to coach football and how to devise a game plan. I mean, look at these numbers. Washington was 1 of 15 on 3rd down, 1 for 15. That's 6.7% 3rd down conversion rate. That's as bad as it gets. They also had just 76 yards yards on the ground, which, by the way, I tweeted about this, Nick. There's some good stats. Washington has scored 7 points in 2 of their last 3 games, I believe. They only had that twice ever under Scott Turner. I was on the camp of Scott Turner was underrated as an OC. I was on the camp of Bieniemy was pretty much hidden behind Andy Reid, and who knows what he would be. Well, guess what? They didn't run the ball enough in this game. They didn't run enough counter against the Giants. They didn't run any interesting pin pull concepts. I have no idea why they didn't do that in this game, but what it led to is 1 of 15 on third downs. It led to just 76 yards rushing, just 176 yards passing for the Commanders in this game. And listen to these first 8 possessions by the Giants defense. These are insane numbers, Nick. On the first 8 possessions of Washington's offensive game, they had just 46 yards on 8 possessions, 2 first downs, 7 punts, and then that interception by Deonte Banks, which I can't wait to talk about and break down on tape, Nick. I got to tell you, Nick, this is like we've talked a little bit about 2 weeks ago, and in the games before that, Nick, how bad the film was and how not fun it was to break down. Oh, yeah. This is going to be a really fun film to break down the Giants defense. I think the offense, first half at least, will be fun to break down as well, and a couple big plays in the second half. But the defense, man, this is great tape we get to break down this week, and that part alone, I'm very excited about.
Yeah, the Giants entered this game with 5 sacks. 4 of them were from Kayvon Thibodeau. Today, it was Oprah was just giving sacks away. They sacked Sam Howell 6 times. I feel like they could have got him even more. It was Dexter Lawrence getting 2. It was Jason Pinnock. It was Micah McFadden splitting 1 with Kayvon Thibodeau. It was Kayvon Thibodeau getting 1 on his own. You have Leonard Williams getting pressure. He blocks a field goal. It was just an entire effort from this defense and that Deonte Banks play. Look, we talk a lot about man coverage, by the way. Dan is repping a hat right now for CBS Sports. I don't know how I feel about Dan as a hat guy, but you look pretty good right now, man.
I'm not typically a hat guy, but I saw some comments I saw some comments about my backwards hat look. People don't like that look. I'm not typically a hat guy, just having a bad hair day, as you can obviously see. So I went from the backwards hat to the frontwards hat. Which is the better look, Nick?
Well, you're not a 13-year-old child, so I think it's.
I believe in backwards hats. I'm a fan.
You're a backwards hat. Oh, Colin Coward would hate you.
I'm not a hat guy in general. You are right that I'm just not a hat guy. I very rarely wear.
I think you look good. I think you look good.
Shout out to Adi Joseph, who runs CBS Sports Editorial. He gave me a couple hats this week. This one I like because I had a really nice golf day wearing it. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't the greatest golf day, but shout out Thomas Schaefer because Florida golf is amazing. Got to give credit to Southern Florida for their golf. I paid yeah, there you go.
That's what
paid $27 for a hell of a round on Friday with my boys. But yeah, Nick, I mean, all the vibes were good for me coming into this weekend. I actually felt like I didn't get a chance to join the preview podcast, unfortunately. So I didn't get a chance. So busy at the end of the week, Nick. I didn't get a chance to even listen to your predictions. So I'm curious to hear if you predicted a Giants win. I felt yes, and I think we would have been on the same page. I don't know if we would have predicted the same win, but look, people are coming into this game out of this game, Nick, saying, "Oh, 14-7. The Giants won this game, but they eked it by." I feel like that score did not do a good job of depicting how the Giants actually played in this game. The Giants fumbled inside the red zone. Saquon Barkley, that's points off the board. Graham Gano missed a kick he never misses. That's points off the board as well. And the Giants also, let me see this stat. They fumbled a punt inside their own 15, Nick. They dropped the easiest 7 points I've ever seen on that Kayvon Thibodeau pick six, which he obviously took blame for after the game. I mean, that's 7 points there for the board. And then they fumbled inside the Washington 15, that Saquon Barkley fumble. So that's, at minimum 17 points more the Giants should have had, 17 point swing. But if they convert on 20 points with the Graham Gano missed field goal, that's 20 right there at minimum. But if they convert on that Barkley drive where he fumbled, because that was still 1st and 10, that's 24 points. After the game, just listen to how, it was described by Jonathan Allen of the Washington football, or the Commanders, I should call them. Yeah. He said they kicked our ass. Just like plain and simple, they kicked our ass. That's what it really was like. So that's why I'm excited to see the tape, Nick. Did you get that feel too, that the tape is going to show this game was a lot bigger of a blowout, really, than not blowout, but a lot better of a win than the 14-7?
I would say definitely on defense. The defense dominated Washington's offense. The Giants only scored 14 points, but it did at least appear like the Giants offense was much more functional than just 14 points. But then again, we might be approaching this just because we have seen just shit offense all season. And this offense, they were moving the football. In the second half, look, dude, they would try to pass it on first down a little bit in the second half, and it didn't work. And then they would just run the football, get in the third and manageable. And then the one time they ran a screen to Darren Waller, got to a 4th and 1, punted it. And then Tyrod Taylor, they got to a 3rd and 3. Tyrod Taylor missed Wan'Dale Robinson. So they were close, but there were a lot of situations where they were very close and they had the plays drawn up, but the execution was off. But the execution was there when it mattered in the first half. And if we just want to delve into the offense, look, the Giants had 7 explosive plays in this game. That's like what? That's, I think, a half. I think they only had 14 heading into this game. Last year, they had like 40 something, like the low 40s, which was dead last in the league, as we always bring up. So 7 explosive plays. Again, it's against Washington. Washington kind of bleeds explosive plays, but you have a backup quarterback with no left tackle, no starting center, no right tackle in there, finding a rookie downfield twice for 2 explosive plays. Jalen Hyatt finished with 2 catches for 75 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson had an explosive play on his 1 reception. Darius Slayton had an explosive play. Saquon Barkley had an explosive play that led to a touchdown. And then I think Tyrod Taylor had the other explosive play with his legs on the 20-yard quarterback draw. So the Giants were moving the ball and pushing it vertical. That's going to open up the rushing attack. That's going to allow the Giants to operate quickly, and they need to create explosive plays on offense. And they did exactly that. It's just they only scored 14 points. I can understand the trepidation from some fans to be like, well, let's temper expectations. It's still only 14 points, but this is a gigantic step in the right direction. We're just looking for positivity right now, and the Giants took a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, they did. And you broke it down really well, Nick, that this was something I thought was interesting just because I haven't seen this in a while with the Giants. They had 5 different receivers who had a reception of 20 plus yards in this game. We just haven't seen that kind of thing from the Giants in a long time. I think since at the minimum last season, I felt like it was more of a top down approach on offense, Nick, where, doing those things like you mentioned, like opening up taking those shots downfield. And that's the thing I love about Tyrod. If he gets the 3rd and long, like he's not thinking sticks. He's just not thinking it. He's like, I'm going to give my receiver a chance to make this play. And he does that on 2nd and long as well, a little bit more often too. And I feel like that opened, like you said, that opened up different areas of the field to kind of lead to those 5 plays of 20 plus yards. I have some more good stats, but it looked like you wanted to say something next.
Yeah, it's just Tyrod is doing such a good job making or punishing the defense when they rotate a safety down. If they align like 2 safeties pre-snap, and then he senses or it's just seen right before the snap that a safety rolls down into the box, it confirms a one-on-one matchup. On his drop back, he's looking the post safety off whoever's going to rotate. So whichever side he wants to target, he's going to look away from that. He's going to catch the snap. He's going to hit his back foot, and then he's going to flip back to that side. That's what happened with the first Jalen Hyatt touchdown. I think that might have been what happened with the red zone target to Jalen Hyatt that he almost came up with against Benjamin St-Juste. Tyrod Taylor, whenever he confirms one-on-one matchups, he is making them pay for rotating another man down in the box. And what is that going to do again? It's going to help out the rushing attack. It's going to alleviate the pressure on the running game, man. So I love the fact that he's just making defenses worried about the fact that he's going to challenge you if you're going to rotate someone down in the box.
Exactly. That's it right there, Nick. Like, yes, a lot was made of Saquon Barkley's back on the field. How does that impact how a defense will play you? And it does impact how a defense will play schematically, but nothing impacts it more than what you just said. Make those safeties second guess if they can rotate down. Make those safeties second guess if they can play aggressive, because also on the 49-yarder, the Commanders thought they could play off coverage and that would be enough against Jalen Hyatt, but he burned off coverage there and they played the safety way too aggressively. And I watched the whole stripe of Tyrod's helmet on that play. It's held left the entire time. He snaps back right and he throws that into space, leading Jalen Hyatt basically because he had so much space because he had the step despite the off coverage, and then he also had so much space to the sideline based on where the route started. And just to put some context behind what you just said, Nick, about those explosive plays, the Giants had those 6 explosive plays of 20 plus yards, the 5 different receivers, and obviously the Tyrod run. That was a 15.4% explosive play rate for the Giants. This is according to Doug Analytics, so shout out. That ranks as the 9th highest among all games this season from any offense from an explosive pass rate standpoint. I'm sorry, this was only the pass plays. So this is 6 pass plays of 20 plus. It's 9th best game by any team offense pass game this entire season from an explosive pass play rate, which I thought was really interesting. A couple other interesting stats I want to get into from Doug Analytics, get your thoughts on this. And there's a bunch of questions coming in. We said we'd answer them. So we'll pause after this and start to answer those, then get back into stuff, Nick. But a few other stats. Tyrod Taylor has been expected to complete 59.4% of his passes, according to Next Gen Stats, but he's completed 66.3 with a CPOE of 68.8%, which is actually first in the NFL among all quarterbacks with 50 plus attempts right now for completion percentage over expectation, an advanced stat according to Next Gen Stats. Let's see, a couple others I thought were interesting. Jalen Hyatt, Nick, average up a target 23.8 yards. That's the highest for all receivers with 10 plus targets. 4 targets of 40 plus air yards. He had in this game, tied for the 4th most. The max is 5 targets. And these are also, by the way, just to shout him out again, Doug Analytics. Check him out on Twitter. I want to make sure you do follow him. He's an amazing follow. He was dropping these stats after the game. A couple other interesting stats I want to go over. Tyrod Taylor's first half stats, Nick. Plus 0.11 EPA per play, plus 13.8 completion percentage over expectation, 13.2 average intended air yards, and 9.1 average completed air yards. Those are bonkers numbers from an air yard standpoint. They were averaging 0.35 EPA per pass play, plus 0.55 EPA per pass on first and second down. That's where I want to go, though, with you, Nick. There's still a lot to talk about. And obviously in the game, Tyrod Taylor finished with a plus 5.1 EPA versus Sam Howell's minus 12.7. But I want to go there. The plus 0.55 EPA per pass the Giants had in the first half on first and second down, Nick. I felt like in the second half, the Giants got a little conservative with their game plan, considering how much success they had on first down. I agree this is a game you want to keep the ball on the ground with Saquon Barkley. I agree this is a game you want to win like 17-7, 20-13 type thing. But I like the idea of running on second down, passing on first down to open up the run on second down. I also like the idea, Nick, of giving Tyrod occasional no huddle series. An occasional series he can work from the gun, use no huddle, use what you just said, his advanced kind of processing before the snap to understand where the defense is going to be. And I just like to see that a little bit more often because they did find a lot of success in the first half passing on first, second down. And I watched them open up that second half, Nick, with a run on first down for -2 and then a run on their next series for just 2 yards, setting up a 2nd and 12 and a 2nd and 8. I want the run to stay as a big part of this, but maybe pass first down, then you run 2nd and 3rd down. That's kind of where I kind of see, and occasionally it doesn't have to always be that way. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, you just want to, well, first off, we don't have the film. I don't know if there were safeties rotating down. I don't know if they were in too high, because if they were in too high and they were -1 in the box, everything tells you to run the football, especially if you have a lead and you're trying to bleed the clock. So the film will really confirm that, but yeah, just generally speaking, I'm on the same page with you. You want to keep the defense guessing and keep them on your toes. The Giants just seemed like they had no confidence in Washington's offense to mount anything against their defense was buzzing against Washington. And Sam Howell, from the first and second drive, you noticed this guy was just not in sync at all. And it was even before Wink Martindale really started to just bring the pressure. Dexter Lawrence just was running through Nick Gates and the other two guards the entire game. Kayvon Thibodeau, the entire defensive front, man, was just getting after. But let's get into some of these real quick. Thank you so much, HB Greg. Can't say it enough, he says. You will not find a podcast that provides what these two do. Excited for a great post game. Thanks for the fun and insightful content. HB Greg, thank you so much for the donation. We also have Shane says, can't wait to see your film review. Oh, we can't wait to do the film review. Shane, in my opinion, the next 7 games are winnable, except maybe Dallas. Defense is playing like a top 10 unit. They are. Hopefully Jones, Andrew Thomas, and John Michael Schmitz return soon to help the offense. Thank you so much, Shane. Brett Moore, thank you so much. Why do you gents think they have not selected a return specialist? Isn't that easy from college specialists?
Yeah.
Look, I think this is a good question. I believe they wanted to keep Eric Gray on the roster to see what he has as a running back, as insurance to Saquon Barkley, who got hurt in week 2. So that really just substantiated that mode of thinking. And you just trusted him to be that player. He's not. This is the second time he's muffed a punt. He's looked uncomfortable doing it. I don't want a Dory Jackson back there. Dory Jackson didn't dress in this game. I'm fine with having Darius Slayton back there. Just catch the damn football if he's going to be secure and catch it. Sterling Shepard, I thought he was going to be that guy. He ends up fumbling it. But Brett, to your question, man, I'm not 100% sure why the Giants have struggled so much. I think it's just kind of getting a little conservative and cheap with the roster and not allocating it to one person, which I do understand, but maybe you have to start thinking that you have to allocate that to one specialist. Jamison Crowder was that guy. He was, and he would have been okay on offense, but you let him go and that's fine. I understand why. It's just, you expect these young players to catch the damn football like they've been doing since they were, clinic flag or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it, Nick. Like I said, I tweeted at one point in the game as a tongue-in-cheek joke, like the best option for the Giants on these punt returns is just let it roll, and where it downs, it downs. At least you keep possession in that way, because they almost lost this game because that muff punt. They had no momentum at the time, Washington, none whatsoever. That led to a touchdown in a 14-0 game, like in a game that only had 21 points. 33% of the points came because of that special teams play by the Giants. And, you don't want to just let it roll and down every play, and you do want to have that specialist. But I think the Giants made a gamble that what you said is going to come true, which is I don't want to say how hard is this to do, because even Saquon Barkley made a good point of it in the post game. He's like, I'm not going to blame Shep for that. Shep's not a punt return. That's not his job. He got asked to do it in a tough spot, and he wishes he could made a play, and he made a bad play, but that's not his job. But to track these punts down, it's not what he is. But you want to gamble, like, okay, Paris Campbell, Nick, we obviously have seen his role diminish in the last couple of weeks, and we've seen the Giants hand some of those snaps to Jalen Hyatt, who damn well deserves them, right? And other players. But at the time when they made the decision, Paris Campbell was coming off a really good training camp where he worked with Daniel Jones a lot in that first team offense, and he made a lot of plays in training camp. So it's just tough from a coaching perspective at that time and a standpoint to be like, let's get rid of it, because that's the only guy I can really see them not picking from this wide receiver group personally that makes any sense to have kept Jamison Crowder over, obviously, at this point. Like, I still believe, I'm sorry, who were you going to say?
Well, Sterling Shepard's a name that you could throw out there.
Well,
I know
yeah.
he played
Well,
a lot
yeah.
of snaps here, and I'm not
True.
advocating for that, but if we're going to be objective,
True.
that's
That's fair.
that's
I didn't even think of
yeah.
that with Shepard. Yeah. And that's, great team leader. They kept him in for that reason, I'm sure. But that's another guy. So you either go Campbell or Shepard at that point, and you keep Crowder instead of him, and you get certainty there. But I almost feel like the dysfunction of the special teams goes even higher than just who's the return man. Like, even if Crowder was back there, bad things would happen to the special teams unit. Thank God they got that blocked field goal by Leonard Williams. Their first in 99 games, freaking 6 seasons the Giants had a block kick or any kind of special teams play of note, but at least they got something back in the positive lane there. Let's get to a few more of these because I want to also pivot back to the game.
Yeah, we also had Cam Brown steal the soul of Jamison Crowder on that first.
It was a nice hit.
That was. Chris Carter, thank you so much for the donation, and let's get into this. I still think Daniel Jones gives the offense greater upside, but with the current state of the offensive line, I think Tyrod is a better fit because he's quicker at processing and better at navigating the pocket. Tyrod may be better fit until the line is more intact. Chris, I agree with you. The way Tyrod Taylor navigates the pocket when it looks like it's about to crash down is so much better than what Daniel Jones was doing 2 or 3 games ago. I don't even think that's an argument. And you can say it's because Daniel Jones is shell-shocked, and you would have a very good point, and I can hear that argument. But the reality of the situation is, if you put Tyrod in there now, he is finding ways to reset his feet while keeping his eyes downfield and maneuvering himself into a place where he can escape at the same time, and then finding an open receiver or just getting down if he has to and taking the sack, which doesn't happen all that often. I think Tyrod Taylor, what he's doing by extending plays under pressure, has been really impressive. And I'm just right there with you, Chris. I am.
Yeah, I think that you made a good point there, Nick. I think, one quote by Brian Daboll really did a good job to talk about it. He talked about, Brian Daboll said, he thought Tyrod Taylor made a heck of a play, the tight window throw to Darren Waller, which we'll talk about later. Great adjustment, too, on that route on 3rd down. And he said he thought that he did a great job with his feet throughout this game. His timing in the passes, according to Brian Daboll, his timing in the passing game to get that ball to Saquon on the run. That's kind of the play that comes to mind about what you just discussed, Nick, like his ability to manipulate that pocket. If you watch that pocket, that pocket was about to break down. What he did was his decision that he made to get to the Saquon check down. We're talking about the Saquon touchdown catch. What he did is he went straight forward into the pocket and moved laterally into the pocket to then find Saquon, and it cut off a lot of the lane for where he can miss, or kind of made it a shorter, easier throw for him. And what happens? He hits him in stride. Saquon does the rest. He houses it. If he tries to escape to the left there, Nick, I think it's going to be tough for him to flip his hips, throw back across his body to Saquon, and get any kind of yak on that play.
Not even just that. Jamin Davis was the covering linebacker on Saquon Barkley. The path that Tyrod Taylor took forced Jamin Davis to hesitate just a split second to allow Saquon Barkley to get outside. And then once Saquon Barkley's outside of you, I don't care how athletic you are as a linebacker, you're not going to be able to cut off an angle when he also has depth towards the end zone as well. And that's what Saquon had. It was a good route by Saquon.
And if Tyrod Taylor is instead rolling to his left, not only is that going to make the actual throw harder because he's outside the pocket, has to flip his hips as a righty and then somehow find a way, but it's also going to make that path that you just discussed from Jamin Davis completely different, right? If he's rolling left and moving parallel with the line of scrimmage or backwards on the line of scrimmage, Jamin Davis has no reason to move forward at that point. But if he's moving forward like he was, he has a reason to move forward. And that's why Brian Daboll pinpointed that play as something he was really impressive. Just to finish that quote, he said, Tyrod had a good game, played well, took care of the football, made good decisions, threw the ball where it was supposed to be thrown. I felt like, Nick, with the exception of the miss to Wan'Dale Robinson on a great route on 3rd down, I don't really know what misses Tyrod Taylor had in this game. I'm going to have to go back and look. But just pure miss-wise, did not have that many, especially when you consider how often he threw downfield. He tried a lot of deep shots in this game. You might want to call the Hyatt one in the red zone a quote-unquote miss. I don't know if that's a miss. I think that's probably just good coverage. Like, that's pretty damn good ball placement. Like, we've seen a lot of games, a lot of quarterbacks where some of these balls over the top are out of bounds, 2 to 3 yards, not really on the right shoulder. And I felt like he didn't really miss in this game with the exception of that Wan'Dale Robinson route. So I was also really impressed with Tyrod Taylor, like you said. As far as the question goes, because I do want to answer it, I still don't really know necessarily who gives the Giants the most upside. I'm sorry, the best chance to win right now, Nick, because I do think that potentially the offensive line, as it gets healthier, you know, it still is a potential ceiling situation for Daniel Jones. I don't know. I got to see it. Jones is going to have to come back in when he does come back in because he is the starter. Brian Dable confirmed it. And he's going to have to do some of the things Tyrod did, like take those shots on those 2nd and 9 and 3rd and longs. Like, I get it. You want to make the sticks. You want to keep the offense moving. You don't want to punt. But no, not really. Like, you need to open this thing up. You need defenses to respect all areas of the field like Tyrod made them do by throwing those balls. Like, it's 3rd and 13 and he's throwing all the way downfield. He's not like checking it down or throwing underneath. Like, that changes how you have to play an offense.
And it's not just to the boundary either. And that's a huge
Right.
point.
Some
Now, the
field side
Jalen
throw.
Hyatt,
Yeah.
it's a field side throw. Jalen Hyatt play, the first one was a boundary pass, but
Sure.
but Tyrod has tried those from the wide side, from the field side as well. And it's just a totally different element to the offense when you're willing to do that as a quarterback. Tyrod has proven that. And I'm not sitting here saying that Daniel Jones shouldn't start. I do believe it is a conversation that has to bleed in. I don't think it's also a certain thing that Tyrod Taylor must get benched. This is an injury situation where Daniel Jones has had this injury in the past. I think you just handle this with kid gloves and you have a competent player and you actually have some offensive firepower for once. I get it was only 14 points, but Giants were creating explosive plays. I don't think they have to go to Daniel Jones unless he is certainly, you're not going to get re-injured. And even then, I still think it's a discussion, which I didn't believe I would say that leading into this game. How do you feel about that?
I think I want to see a little bit more. I think it's fair to say, though, Nick, like, look, they can't. Here's the only thing. There was a buzz on the field today. There was a buzz on defense. There was a buzz on offense. There's a buzz on the sideline in general. And that's what really is going to determine how this thing moves forward. It really is, because Tyrod Taylor, they played really well for Tyrod today, and they played really well with Tyrod against the Bills. That's the fact of the matter. They were in both games. They dominated this game with the exception of stupid errors that they didn't need to make. The punt return fumble, Saquon Barkley's fumble in the red zone. He has like 6 career fumbles or something stupid. Saquon Barkley. This is his 5th or 6th career fumble. Like, it's bad luck, but whatever. I mean, he's taking blame for it. That was a really strong play by the Washington Commanders defense. And then obviously the last thing I mentioned, which I'm forgetting now, the other fumble. The muff punt, that one, and then the missed field goal by Gano. I mean, they had a lot of stupid things to take points off the board, but for the most part, they dominated Washington, and then they competed against Buffalo to the point where they should have. So, if you feel like it's going to be on the players, in my opinion, that's what it's going to come down to. Like, if Daniel Jones comes back in, he has no time. He has to produce immediately. That's the fact of the matter. That's what it is right now. They're not going to grind through these grueling bad offensive games like they had in that stretch before Jones's injury, and then look at that. That's going to change. Like, that's how things work, in my opinion. That's how football locker rooms work. Like, these players are people. They're human beings. Like, if they don't feel like they have as good, they're going to decide who they think has the best chance to give them wins. And that's who they're going to want to go with, in my opinion. It goes beyond David.
It just depends on the circumstance and the situation. Right now, you have some buzz with Tyrod Taylor, and do you want to bench him for the rightful starter? And I think Daniel Jones could do everything that Tyrod Taylor did today. I do. But right now, the offense looks a lot better with Tyrod Taylor at the helm. So it's going to be something that Brian Dable and the coaching staff, I'm sure, will be discussing throughout the week. It should be interesting. But we have one more. And Bowman Klein, thank you so much, Bowman. This is awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Bowman, we've talked for a while. Obviously, we've DM'd back and forth. I think even before Nick joined the show, or maybe you joined right on that. But I'm not sure if you've had some conversation with him, Nick. But look, you just donated $100 to the show. I really appreciate that, and thank you so much. Shows your appreciation for our work. We're gonna keep putting in hard work. Let's get to your question.
Yes, he says, I love what you guys do. Thank you, Bowman. My favorite pod. I usually never catch these live events. The Hyatt finally finds its receptions via T-Mobile. Excellent ball placement led to big yards after the catch. The defense dominated. And then he says, P.S. Do you think we can get a punt return and a 6-rounder for DJ? Oh, the DJ shade get thrown in there. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to be in the cards, is what I mean.
No. And look, Daniel Jones is still the starter. Brian Dable made that clear after the game, even though, he praised Tyrod Taylor. Some people have, made their assumptions about what he said and whatnot, things of that nature. But Jones is the starter. And even after the game, Tyrod Taylor said, and which I love Tyrod's quote. He's like, look, Daniel Jones is our leader. He's our starter. I'll do what the coaches say. And when they, when that time comes, I just prepare myself week after week. He doesn't get too high or too low, Tyrod Taylor. He's very, even keeled. But go ahead. What were you going to say? I was
better nickname, T-Mobile or Danny Dimes?
T-Mobile for me.
I think T-Mobile is a pretty cool nickname for a fast quarterback.
mean, Danny Dimes is a sick nickname, but
It's a sick nickname.
there just need to be more dimes. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah,
It's been 5 years. Like, we need a lot more dimes. I know
we're
it's
pretty
not his
broke
fault.
right
I
now.
get it. The line sucks. I get it. Everything sucks. But we need more dimes for that nickname to make sense, right? But back to the conversation. Like, the issue is, and we'll get to this another day, Nick, because there's still so much more I want to talk about not related to this. And thank you guys for the questions. We'll get all those answered who get into the super chat. But it's like it becomes a short-term versus long-term issue as well for me, Nick, because there is no upside really to playing Tyrod Taylor on a future basis. There's upside for this season. There one maybe, and that's dependent on if Jones can play better. But like, and he's not rattled, right? And he comes back looking like he was last year. If he does, then look, they go back to him. That's fine. He's the starter rest of the year. If he doesn't, then that's when the conversation becomes, do you go back to Taylor? But like, that's just not an upside play for them future-wise. He's 34 years old. There really doesn't appear to be much of a ceiling with Tyrod Taylor, I don't think, long-term, even though maybe he's, in the best system of his career for what his skill set is. There's not much of a ceiling there. So Jones still has your ceiling. Jones is still the guy you paid. And I think somebody made a good point in the comments. It's like, if you go to Jones, right, Nick, you go right back to him when he's healthy. Let's say it's this week against the Jets. He struggles. They don't move the ball on offense. They go again. He struggles. He don't move the ball on offense. If you then have the locker room turning to the point where they're saying, look, there was energy with Taylor. We almost upset the Bills. We should have upset the Bills. We got screwed by that call at the end and a couple other calls in that game. Then we came out. We dominated Washington. Yes, second half wasn't as good offensively. We got a little conservative, but we dominated that football game outside of a few stupid plays, the muff punt. If your locker room turns to that point, Nick, it's like, then I don't know, like, that's the problem. You go back to Tyrod, that's it pretty much for Jones, and you still have him signed next year at a $47 million cap hit that you can't get out of. No one will trade for that contract at that point, probably. And so it's just the long-term play of it is where it gets really tricky with Tyrod versus Jones.
And that's the bottom line too. You're right. You can't go to Daniel Jones. He struggles for like 3 series. And you're like, all right, Tyrod, get back in there. Like that. That's a terrible situation. So Daniel Jones, get healthy. Take your time if you need to get healthy, and then we'll just evaluate this practice in, practice out.
Yeah, without a doubt. And there is the sunk cost fallacy, which is always in play with all things in sports and life. And you have to at some point think of that, Nick. And that's always going to be in consideration for Dable, for Shane. But, it's a big cost. It's a big cost. And it feels like there's still so much more upside to me if Daniel Jones reaches his peak than if Tyrod Taylor reaches his peak. Because like you said, all those throws Tyrod made, Jones can make. He just has to make them. And he has to be quicker with it. And everything has to go so much faster in his mind. Like, it just has to be. And I just think, like, generally speaking, he just has to have more of an aggressive mindset too, Nick. Like, some of these things, like, it's not brand new for the Giants to have faced. Like, I tweeted about this. The play to Hyatt on that 2nd and 9. First of all, Tyrod's looking past the sticks on 2nd and 9, which is huge, which is really huge, because a lot of the times it just felt like under Jones this season, at least, and let's be honest, last season when they were dead last in explosive pass plays, Jones wasn't really looking past the sticks, and that's fine. He wants to get to the sticks. He wants a first down, Jones. He wants to keep the chains moving. He doesn't want to make a mistake. He wants to.
And whose offense was like that?
Jason Garrett, you're talking about? Yeah. And he's used that. But even, that doesn't. I don't find that to be an excuse, to be honest, Nick. Because look at what Tyrod's doing and Brian Dable's offense.
It's not an excuse, but it is it's something in his past that has set a standard now that we did not realize back in 2019 when he was a rookie. Because in 2019 when he was a rookie, he was taking those one-on-one shots to Darius Slayton. We don't really see that as much now. And I'm not saying it's all because of Jason Garrett. I think there's a lot that goes into this. I mean, you're talking about years of a quarterback developing. Like, it's not just Jason Garrett, but there is something there, I would imagine.
And look, even if you look at the times he did in the games before, when he was rattled before the injury, Slayton has to make that catch against Miami and get 2 feet down, but the balls Tyrod's throwing right now, these vertical balls, aren't even leaving that little smart margin for error. They're hitting the receiver in stride, right? The pass everyone's complaining about, Darren Waller. Waller has to go back shoulder, full extension. Like, it's a little different when it's hitting you in stride. Like, he has to also hit those throws a little bit better ball placement wise too. And I feel like that was the case on the big catch to Wan'Dale Robinson earlier. That was great timing and look, it's not just me who's thinking it. It's Brian Dable. What did he say? He said his timing in the passing game was great. That's what he was saying. And it's the feet too. I think that was a good point by Dable too. How quick and we talked about this on last week's All 22 podcast, how quick and quiet are Tyrod Taylor's feet in the pocket, man? He catches that football from the gun or from under center after he hits his drop. And it's just so compact and slow little wasted movement with his feet that helps him get the ball out of his hands quicker, man.
Yeah, man, Rex Ryan would be praising his feet right now because they are very quick and they are. But honestly, man, he's very light on his feet, and you could tell when he doesn't like something. His first read, his feet and his hips and his entire body is
Right.
oriented towards the other side of the field like that. Man, it's so instantaneous. And even if you talk about the touchdown pass to Darren Waller, like I wish we saw more of things like that from Daniel Jones. And I'm not making this a Tyrod Daniel. I'm not trying to. Maybe I am though, accidentally. But that is a back shoulder throw where Tyrod Taylor realized there was an underneath defender to the right of Darren Waller. There was the trailing defender linebacker closing width to the left. So we couldn't put it in that direction. And then there was someone else over top over another receiver. It had to go back shoulder and it had to go high. And Darren Waller, that is a great adjustment by Darren Waller. Not easy to do, Dan, to adjust your body like that when you're running up the seam. But that ball is perfectly, optimally placed where no defender can make a play on that football because of the touch. And that's another thing that I've seen from Tyrod over these last 2 games that I'm like, it just looks different on tape than Daniel Jones, unfortunately.
It does look different. Let's be honest. It's unfortunate to say. It sucks to say, but it does. And I felt like the seam was going to be better utilized with Tyrod even before that, because even in just some of the little moments he's had with the Giants in preseason and when Jones has been injured for a few plays over the last few years, the seam was just, it felt way better utilized by Tyrod Taylor. That play, you did a great breakdown. I'm excited to break it down on tape, man. The ball placement has to be so good because it's back shoulder, but it has to be away from that corner and in between the safety, and it has to be, as Dable says, the timing has to be perfect on that. And yeah, give Waller credit, as Dable did as well. He gave Tyrod and Waller credit for that because let's be honest, Waller had a sick adjustment in the air to there and great body control. That's the elite level body control we talk about with Darren Waller. That's when people say like this is a special tier 1 type of tight end. That's what they're referring to, the player who can flip his hips like that in the red zone. But also what's cool in that play, man, and it reminded me a little bit of like some of the past. You remember like the Eli Manning to Larry Donnell touchdowns up the seam in the red zone where Eli staring down the left side, snaps back and just rips back shoulder to Donnell. We haven't had that in so freaking long, it feels like. I think Ingram had one his first game of his rookie year, or the first primetime game of his rookie year against the Lions, if I remember, in the red zone from Eli Manning. But it's been a while since we've had that. And you know what? When did it come, Nick? It came after the Giants killed themselves, shot themselves in the foot with a red zone penalty to put them at like 3rd and goal from the 15, a down and distance you know is it has been over, quite frankly, this year until this moment, and wasn't over at that point. It was always going to be 3 or at worst an interception or a sack before this game. It was a touchdown in this game, and that put an extra 4 points on the board and changed the game in a lot of ways. And so I do want to give credit to that as well. I have some other stats I want to get to, but first I see you want to jump in, Nick, so I want to let you.
No, you can get to the stats, buddy.
Okay, yeah. Just a few other stats I want to run by you in this game. The Giants' best drive of the game, Nick, the one you're referencing with the Darren Waller touchdown, it was an 88-yard drive on 8 plays. They overcame that red zone holding penalty on that 15-yard strike. I thought that was one of the best
plays, man.
I'm sorry?
They had 3 explosive plays on that drive.
On that one drive, and you did a good job of breaking that down. And one of those came with incredible post-catch move from Wan'Dale Robinson, which we can talk about, and I can't wait to watch tape on, but also good ball placement on that. One of them came on a really well-timed pass between Tyrod Taylor and Darius Slade. I mean, the timing on that thing, dude, and the ball placement on that thing is very, very strong. It's very strong. That's why these next-gen stats look so good for Tyrod Taylor. He started the game, Taylor, 10 of 14 for 163 and 2 touchdowns. And in this game, Taylor finished, Nick, 18 of 29 for 279, 2 TDs, 0 interceptions, also added 35 on the ground to go over 300 total yards. He became the first Giants quarterback with 275 yards or more passing, 2 passing touchdowns, and 0 interceptions in a home victory since Eli Manning did it in 2015, which, by the way, was also against the Washington football team, which I thought was interesting because the Giants just absolutely own Washington. But it's been a long time since they had 275, 2-0, and a win in this game, or at least at home, since 2015.
Yeah, it's been a while. And Tyrod, man, he's on fire right now. He's on fire. And Jalen Hyatt, I love seeing this kid come into his own. That ADOT that you listed, what was it, 23.8 yard average depth of target, like he's back at Tennessee running around Cam Smith and South Carolina again, man. Like it's awesome, dude. It's awesome to see. I'm glad that these young wide receivers are really starting to come into their own, though, because you brought up that Wan'Dale Robinson catch. You're right. That was a well-placed ball. And then he spun away from the player who was defending him, who should have tackled him, picked up an extra, 15, 16 yards on that play. That was just a quick little pass. It went for 22 yards. Unfortunately, it was the only, I think, catch that Wan'Dale Robinson had. But dude, I'm not worried about Wan'Dale. Wan'Dale's a huge part of this team. And I was looking just on the backside when I went through my rewatch of the game just to see what he was doing. And he was open. It was just Tyrod was opening up to the other side of the field because Wan'Dale Robinson typically is on that boundary side. He'll run like the stick underneath a clear out, typically has outside leverage. But whenever the Giants had that one-on-one matchup, they were flipping to the other side and going deep. And that's one of the things I absolutely love because they didn't even connect on some of them, man. How many deep shots did Jalin Hyatt have, including that one touchdown, which was a little bit more in the red zone? He caught the 2. I think he had another one, and then he had the red zone
near miss. Yep.
It's excellent to see, man.
It really is. And speaking of Jalin Hyatt, Brian Dable said after the game, I told you we're going to play him, and he made some plays because he did say we're going to start to play him more. He said he's still got stuff to learn, but the way to learn it is to go out there and play. I love to hear that, man, because that means you're going to keep playing him. It's not that, we can't play him right now. We got to keep him back. We can't do too much with him. We don't want to overwhelm him. No, they're going to put him out there and let him learn trial by fire. He said he made a couple good ones. He said, I thought Tyrod gave him some good chances to make them too. Thought that was an interesting comment by Dable for sure. And, one thing I've talked about with you, this was from one more quote here on Jalin Hyatt, who really does look like he could be a special player in my mind for the Giants. He said, Tyrod Taylor on Jalin Hyatt, Nick said, he's one of the fastest guys on the field, if not the fastest at any given point. So you get a chance to get him one-on-one down the field. And the conversation I had with him is, I'm going to give you that chance. And he said, Yes, they tried to hide the coverage, which they did. And this was discussing the 42-yarder. This was Tyrod Taylor on the 42-yarder where Hyatt beat off coverage from St-Juste. And again, as we said before this pod, Nick, there's been a lot of aggressive coverages that Jack Del Rio, the Commanders' defensive coordinator, has tried to throw into the Giants over the last 3 games, the 2 last year and this year. Giants didn't do much to counter them until this game. And Taylor said, yes, they tried to hide the coverage, which they do a great job of disguising in this defense. It's a great defense. They play fast. And something that we've seen on tape was that we would be able to exploit that if we got the opportunity to do so. And he did exploit it with that 42-yarder on 2nd and 9 to Jalin Hyatt. So yeah, just all things around, Nick, some very good plays in the passing game. But obviously, we want to talk a little bit about the defense as well. But before we do that, Nick, there was one more thing I wanted to go over with you offensively. And not a little bit on defense. There's a lot to talk about on the defense. But one more thing offensively, Nick. I thought this was interesting. The offensive line change before the game. So they asked Dable about that. And he said, they asked him, what were you thinking moving Marcus McKethan to left guard? And he's played right guard the entire time since joining the lineup, with exception of the injury. And then Glowinski back to the right side. And he said, it's something we talked about as a coaching staff, Dable said. I think the communication was better. And that was the key that I wanted to talk about, Nick. He said just having Justin Pugh, a veteran, and then Bredesen and Glowinski kind of opposite because they work together so well would tackle Tyree Phillips back. And he was only back for a week, some code words and things like that. Even though he picked it up, I'd say almost all of it on the way back. It's still helpful to have someone right next to him that's been out there and done it veteran-wise. And now he's talking about Mark Glowinski. And then the flip side, having McKethan next to a Pugh.
Yeah, that's no surprise. That's exactly what I would have expected. And the offensive line held up. I mean, Tyrod got sacked, 2 or 3 times in this game? I think he got sacked 4 times, actually, Tyrod Taylor. Chase Young started winning. Justin Pugh lost a couple of those reps to Chase Young. Montez Sweat is also a beast. But overall,
them on the boot.
Yeah, they were scheming up some free rushers like Wink Martindale, getting so many free rushers in on freaking Sam Howell. But all in all, man, with this patchwork offensive line, you could be receiving Andrew Thomas back. That's at least the rumor right now for next game. John Michael Schmitz comes back. Like, that offensive line solidifies. It's going to give whoever the hell the quarterback is that much more time to get rid of the football. And then you can use Tyree Phillips wherever you want it, or Justin Pugh, because Dable also said that in his post-game press conference.
Right.
Like, yeah, we had plans for Tyree Phillips if Evan was going to go. Evan Neal couldn't dress in this game, so we had to play him at tackle, and he held his own there. So I'm imagining Tyree Phillips is going to kick inside and play a guard. So next week, I think the offensive line combination is going to be a different one, which would make the 7th out of 8 games, which is just crazy, man.
Oh, God, it is crazy. I mean, you look at that and it's like, how do they win any games? They've won 2 already. They should have won 3 despite having this offensive line situation. If that offensive line could settle down, the thought is, what can the Giants be because of how the defense looked in this game, Nick? And as Xavier McKinney said after the game, you mentioned, like, they blitzed Sam Howell, 57% of his dropbacks, second highest rate of the season, 5 sacks on blitzes alone. McKinney said, we knew we could eat in this game, and the guys up front did. They did a hell of a job. And Wink did a great job dialing up pressures and calling the whole game, really. And it was essentially the whole game, Nick. There really wasn't a miss by Wink. Yes, I know there was a drive that ended on the turnover and downs, but that's a good stop at the end. Did the fourth down stop at the end. They gave up one touchdown, but it was after a muff punt. So like really that was almost a pitched perfect game by this defense.
And then we could talk about that Banks interception too, because we were getting into it, and then we got sidetracked by your beautiful hat that you have on. Because we talk a lot about Deonte Banks and his man coverage skills, but he's damn good in zone and he's smart. And when he doesn't have a responsibility over the top of him in zone coverage, his eyes go to the backside crossers, and he noticed there was a deep horizontal cross that had leverage coming in behind where he was going to be in zone, and there was no wide receiver to hold him in place. So he has the awareness and the savviness to come off of his location, sink underneath that horizontal cross, and come away with that pick. Like, he's making interceptions like this in zone coverage. He almost had an interception earlier in the season on his in the red zone too. And this is like the third or fourth time we're praising his zone coverage awareness. And it's just something that when he gets labeled this man covering corner, he is that. But he also can play zone coverage, and he's pretty damn smart in doing so. And the Giants were able to assemble this defensive game plan without Adoree Jackson. This is a good receiving unit. Like, Terry McLaurin is a very good wide receiver. Jahan Dotson's kind of MIA this year, but he's a good wide receiver. Curtis Samuel didn't really do much. Good wide receiver. So I'm really proud of what the young secondary was able to do. Xavier McKinney was all over the place once again, almost got into a fight with Nick Gates. It was really entertaining.
And something you mentioned there, which was interesting to me, is they were able to do that despite having issues in the secondary against a good receiver corps. Why is that? Because in the end, as we always say, Nick, it all comes down to who wins the trenches. If you can dominate a team in the trenches like the Giants offensive line did against this Washington O-line, and yes, the O-line for Washington kind of settled down a little in the second half, but I felt like they got away with some holds that I'm going to have to check the tape to confirm, Nick. But just from the broadcast angle, I felt like they were getting away with holds. They're not going to call hold every play, this officiating crew. And you did hear Ron Rivera after the one call that he felt like was blown say, you screwed us 2 years in a row, which, you know, I had to look at that again, but I wasn't positive. I don't remember the play now, but I didn't think that he was definitely right on. Which one was it?
The play last year?
No, last year he was right. I'm talking about the play this year.
No, I think he was just overreacting on that.
I think he was overreacting on that too, but I can't remember which one it was now. But point being, like, when you dominate an offensive line like this, like the Giants did against this unit, like, it doesn't almost matter. And this goes to what people have always said, you know, about pass rush over pass coverage, Nick, which I've debated back and forth and gone back and forth a lot and studied to try to find out more. And I'm still not positive because there are different examples, you know, like, and also, you know, look, the Giants defense to me looked better with A'Shawn Robinson getting some snaps in this game and those three in the middle. Obviously, you need to face base to be able to play with base, or at least the Giants do, the way they're set up on defense, though they could maybe consider getting a little more creative potentially with, like, can they not run some front? It's tough. It might be tough, but to get all three on the field if you're not facing base, I don't want to say that with certainty.
Well, what you mean, like 12, 13? It's all just what personnel that they roll out.
That's what I'm saying. When they're not facing base, when they're facing 11, it's probably harder to get those three on the field, but there may be some creative ways to get those three on the field, especially while Ojulari is out. But that's not for me. That's for Wink Martindale consider. But, you know, in the end, it does come down to how dominant was this front. Like, look at this. Like, Kayvon Thibodeaux had a sack, has now had a sack in 4 of the last 5 games, Nick. Everybody's talked about the sacks with him, but this is what you're getting from him now. You're getting the production that everybody's been calling for. He's up to what now? 5.5 sacks on the season. That through 7 games for Thibodeaux has a very good chance to break the Wink Martindale 10-sack streak. You know, the bad trend, the one that says no defensive lineman can get 10+ sacks in Wink's system. Well, he has a chance to break that down. You mentioned the run-on stat. And by the way, I just want to make something clear. I want to shout out where I got one of the stats earlier. Always want to make sure I do that. The stat on the Giants having their first game where they had 275 yards passing, Nick, 2 passing touchdowns, or where QB had 275, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a home win since 2015. That was via WBG84. That was his stat that he dug up there. But yeah, as I was saying, like, back to some more stats. Next gen stats. Did you see this one, Nick? Dexter Lawrence had a team high 8 pressures in this game. That was the most for any Giant player. It was the most pressures he's had in a game since week 10 of 2022. He was double teamed at his lowest rate of the season, and it was still 40.5%. That's how much this dude gets doubled. His lowest rate of the season for double teams, Dexter Lawrence, was 40.5%. And finally, a team's like, let's see what happens when we don't double team him. And look at what happened when you don't double team him. He had 8 pressures. He had 4 of those 8 pressures one-on-one against Nick Gates. That was just an absolute disaster for Washington trying to put Gates on him. And, you know, he's been dominant like this all season. He just hasn't faced this few double teams. And tonight, he didn't face a lot of double teams. That was the mistake the Commanders made. I doubt the Giants will be lucky enough to get a team to make that mistake again, unless it's Kelsey, who can kind of do a decent job. But even he had help if we remember the tape from last year against the Eagles. So that's kind of what you get when you don't double team Dexter Lawrence. That's how good this dude is.
Yeah, especially when you're in base personnel as much as the Giants probably were in this game, or at least relative to the last two matchups, you're going to have those one-on-one matchups because you have two defensive linemen to your left and to your right, and you have two edge rushers. It's just a lot for the offensive protection to account for. And as we said at the beginning of the episode, the Giants load the line of scrimmage so much and so well, it forces one-on-one matchups. It allows for free rushers to come out, and that is a testament to Wink Martindale. And Dexter Lawrence creating sacks for Leonard Williams, because there was the one play where Leonard Williams looped around. Dexter Lawrence had 3 blockers on him. That's how much attention is on Dexter Lawrence. And Leonard Williams looped right in, and poor Sam Howell looks up, big 99 is right in his face, and he's like, oh shit, and he just gets sacked by Big Cat, who had a good game too, not just with the blocked field goal.
He did have a good game, and some of that is freer rush, but that's okay. Like, that's part of what we wanted. We wanted him to take advantage of Dexter Lawrence in this, in this defense, and what that means from playing next to him. But we got another question here and a donation from Word of Mets. So let's get to this.
Word of Mets, thank you so much. What's your take on pass rushers other than Thibodeaux? I believe he's just referring to edge rushers. With Azeez on IR and not dependable, how do the Giants continue to play lights out and make up for his continued absence? Well, one way they do it is a similar game plan. You force these third and long, second and long situations where you can get Isaiah Simmons on the field, you can get into your sub packages, and you can bring the heat, or you can give the illusion of bringing the heat, and you can isolate Dexter Lawrence in one-on-one matchups. That's one way you can continue to do it. If you're just talking about sending for not using simulated pressures and not using creepers, it's a little bit more difficult, because other than Kayvon Thibodeaux, who still has a ways to go with rushing the passer and developing a pass rush plan and refining his moves and things of that nature, you don't really have another edge rusher who is taking over as a pass rusher. That's not necessarily what even Wink Martindale needs in his system. It's just nice to have because of all the other things I just laid out.
Yeah, I think you broke that down really well, Nick. And, a lot of it is just going to be, will they attack the way they've been attacking lately with Wink, which is dictate to these quarterbacks and, understand that you can be aggressive in your run fits. You can be aggressive in how you play these certain types of quarterbacks like Sam Howell. Look, it doesn't always work. They tried this against Brock Purdy. They were aggressive against Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy made them pay. But Sam Howell wasn't able to make them pay. I don't think Zach Wilson is going to be able to make them pay. I don't know if it'll be Brian Hoyer at that point for the Raiders or Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Garoppolo is slated to come back. I don't think Jimmy is going to be, even if he does play, especially an injured version of Jimmy Garoppolo. So a lot of it is matchup dependent until they get Azeez back. And I know at this point, people don't even want to hear me count on Azeez for anything. And that's fair. I get it at this point. Even I have grown a bit wary with Azeez Ojulari. Just so many missed games due to injuries. So yeah, I think Nick, you did a great job of breaking that down.
Also, Washington, man, they were playing like the Giants were playing earlier in the season, just regarding undisciplined, stupid, untimely penalties at the worst possible moments. And I think Washington's offense, I think they had like 8 3-and-outs in this game. And then like 9 of their offensive drives were 4 or less plays. Like, it was just absolutely disgusting, man.
That is brutal. I want to talk about one more thing that we didn't get to. We talked a little bit about skill players, but I do think it's fair that we discuss this because it's worth discussing. It does feel like Darren Waller has grown a little bit and looks like he's producing at a different level with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. Let's be honest about it. You can say it's the Barkley effect. Fine, I'll consider it. You can say it's the O-line, I guess. Fine, I'll consider it. But this is a different level of production from Darren Waller than we've seen at any point this season. I mean, I felt like, again, I mentioned this earlier, I felt like the Giants got very conservative from a play calling standpoint in the second half. Bunch of first down runs instead of first down passes to open up the run. But if you just look at the beginning of this game, Waller had 5 catches on 5 targets for 77 yards in the first half alone. And he ended up with 98 yards in this game. He's had most, and that was 8 targets, 98 yards, 32 yards after the catch for Taylor with some really well-placed balls to lead to Yak. 4 first downs, the touchdown we discussed, almost a +1 EPA per target, 88% success rate. These are according to Doug Analytics, these analytics ones. 9.2 yards ADOT which is really big, right, Nick? Like, we haven't seen a big ADOT for Darren Waller since he joined the Giants. We're seeing a much bigger ADOT with Tyrod in, or at least let's just say these last 2 games. If you don't want to credit him, that's fine. If you don't want to credit Taylor, I mean, that is. But, the only unsuccessful target was that third down, was that incompletion in the third quarter. But other than that, Waller was really, really impactful and effective in this game. He's looking a lot more like the impactful player we thought he could be when the Giants made the trade for him at this point, Nick. And a lot of his production this year has come via Tyrod Taylor, even if you look at that second half of that Miami game. So I think it's worth discussing that Waller is really taking a step forward in these last 2 games.
He has taken a big step forward, and it's not just because they're going up against bad defenses. Like, this is a bad defense. Bills, maybe you can argue they're a bad defense with their injuries, but you could just sense how comfortable Darren Waller is. He looks natural. It looks like the Darren Waller we all thought that we were getting. Now, it is, I guess, a smaller sample size. I don't know, man, because the Darren Waller time here with the Giants, man, like the first game you almost got to throw out, right? It was just that disgusting.
True.
And then week 3 against Seattle, kind of got to throw that out too regarding Darren Waller, because Daniel Bellinger ended up getting injured, forcing Darren Waller into a role where he was basically blocking the entire game. So there hasn't been a huge sample size. And then San Francisco, you got Fred Warner, you had Dre Greenlaw playing. So it was a little bit more difficult. True. But yeah, as of right now, with the sample size that we do have currently in front of us, Tyrod Taylor is getting the most out of Darren Waller. And I still think there is more to get out of that player because he's just that damn talented.
Yeah, and they're finally starting to figure it out. It's love to see them use him in the red zone. Love to see them use him in the ways they've been using Waller lately. I wanted to get to that, Nick. Anything else that's on your mind about this game? I think we covered a lot here today, and it looks like I don't see any more questions from the listeners outside of the last one from Word of Mets. But anything else you wanted to cover that you didn't think we got to yet?
One more thing. I think we have to, and I know we already touched on it and we talked about this play a lot, but Jalin Hyatt making that 42-yard catch, that was almost like a game-sealing type of catch, or at least it seemed like it was supposed to be. And this is a rookie being able to do that. And if you watch that route, and you can hardly see it by where the camera is, he put a double move or a stutter step on Benjamin St-Juste, because Benjamin St-Juste was an off leverage, but once Jalin Hyatt ate into that leverage, just ate into that leverage. He sunk his hips at the sticks. This is something the Giants run a lot in Brian Daboll's system. You sink your hips, and then it gets the cornerback flat-footed, and then he just exploded right past him. He makes that catch, got both feet in bounds. It was an awesome catch.
Right.
Saquon Barkley fumbles a few plays later, but the Giants kick a field goal there. You go up by 2 scores, and by that point, there'd be like 7 minutes left.
They might have scored a touchdown too. They had a first down after that. Like, they were rolling.
It was 1st and goal when Saquon Barkley fumbled the football. So, yes, they could have easily scored a touchdown. So, it's just one of those moments where I'm like, damn, man, I know Jalin Hyatt only had 2 catches in this game, but that catch was a gigantic one. And it plays right into the script of who Jalin Hyatt is as his deep threat wide receiver. But I still think there's going to be more than that. I don't think this is his only usage. He's not just going to be some deep threat wide receiver. I think as he develops more and gets more and more comfortable, we're going to see Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka trust him to do more. And you're going to see him on little crossing routes. And imagine him running like deep horizontal crossing routes, which we've already seen a little bit, but it's not always just going to be the 9 route. And I'm just excited for this kid's future.
Yeah, and I think you brought up some really interesting traits within that breakdown, right, Nick? Like we saw in that preseason game when Tyrod Taylor hit Jalin Hyatt on that long touchdown in the preseason, that ability to kind of break down and get and sink your hips, but then explode out of that without losing any ground. And in some ways, it's looking so smooth and explosive in doing so, you're almost picking up ground. It sometimes looked like with Jalin Hyatt, but you're also showing a second trait, that ability to have that football awareness, to secure the catch and drag that foot. I'll tell you this, Nick, I thought coming out of break, before I saw a good angle of it, thought we were screwed. I was like, shit, that second foot was out of bounds. Yeah. It was a sick play. We lost it. It was so close, but no, dude, he dragged that foot. That's a big time vet type toe drag swag, like I call it on Twitter. And I'll just shout it out again because it deserves shouting out. It's 2nd and 9, and the Giants were very conservative the entire time, in my opinion, in the second half. They ran, like I said, twice on those 1st and 10s, 1 for -2, 1 for 2, basically killed both those possessions. But that was 2nd and 9, and Taylor was looking past the sticks downfield. So I want to give him credit as well for that, in addition to Hyatt. But definitely we're discussing with Hyatt. Those were good traits to see. And back to what I said before, because I didn't finish this part. Great traits to see from a stop and start ability and from an acceleration standpoint on Wan'Dale Robinson on that long catch that he had on the drive we referenced earlier, because that's that. Like we see Wandell making so far when in his return from the injury, we've seen him make a lot of tough catches, Nick. We've seen him make a lot of conversions where he just gets upfield and does the smart thing. But I've been also wanting to see, does he have that second gear still? Does he have like NFL difference making stop and start ability? And that was NFL difference. Like you catch that ball, you flip your hips the way he did. He stopped and started, wasted no movement, got back inside on a route that was designed to first break outside. Like that extra 15 yards, not everyone is getting that. I don't think basically anyone on the Giants roster is getting it that way.
Especially considering he tore his ACL last year. You don't usually see wide receivers planting that hard, man, because he like planted, he fully committed that defender to jump down on him, and then he just cut vertical, got the yardage he needed to, picked up more while falling through contact. Yeah, Wandell Robinson's a good football player. Limited catch radius, as we saw on the one bad pass by Tyrod Taylor. It was a little bit high, but normal wide receivers who aren't like 5'7" usually catch that.
And look, Nick, we'll end it on that, and we'll just say this: it sucks in my opinion they didn't get to 3-4 because they really should be 3-4 right now. Again, I gotta just say, if Waller wasn't healthy, he gets to that spot where Taylor threw it to for the game-winning touchdown, which sucks. But this is the upcoming schedule right now, and if the defense is playing the way it played today, which is dominant football, like that could work against anyone. It worked against the Bills offensive line. It worked against Washington offensive line. It's going to work against some of these offensive lines I'm about to mention, Nick. Here's the next 5 games for the Giants. They've got versus the Jets next week, coming off the bye for the Jets, but still Zach Wilson. I think Wink is going to have a field day with Zach Wilson personally. Then we got the after the Jets is at Raiders. Like I said, that's 2 weeks from now. Jimmy's supposed to play, but is it a fully healthy Jimmy Garoppolo? Is that offensive line going to be able to protect against Wink Martindale's defense type of Jimmy Garoppolo type game? Then it's at Dallas. That sucks. That's probably going to be tough, though. We've known Dallas to put stinkers out. We've known that the Giants, if they didn't get away from their game plan in that first game, and if they didn't have a stupid block kick field goal for a touchdown, then a pick six early in the game, maybe it would have been different. And then it's at Washington, who they just beat up on, in my opinion. As Jonathan Allen said, they kicked our ass. And then it's at home against the Patriots. I know they just upset the Bills, but like, you know, that's a lot. That's 5 games, and a lot of those, 4 of those 5, you can say, are very, very winnable. So if the Giants can actually get into a groove here, Nick, and win 4 of these 5, that takes them to a point where, what are they now? 6-6 on the season. I know it's like, it seems crazy now. I'm saying they're going to win 4 of their next 5 games, but if they do, and those are again winnable teams, that's 6-6. That's right back in the mix.
And other than the 2 Eagles games you have later, I mean, you got Green Bay in there. You have the Saints. Those are winnable football games, and those are
Eagles
2
won tonight, by the way.
Yes.
And I say that in the sense of, will they maybe rest their starters?
Well, they maybe rest. It depends on how San Francisco, I think, performs over the rest of the season. It's probably going to be those 2 battling for the first round bye. But dude, I mean, yes, it sounds crazy right now. Yes, the Giants just put up 14 points. It's not the most ridiculous. We've seen crazier things happen, and specifically with Green Bay and the Saints. I know there's a lot of football still to be played, but if the defense, and just having Wink Martindale in house, if the defense is playing the way they're playing now, those are 2 quarterbacks you can rattle. Jordan Love and Derek Carr, you can get after those 2. And hey, man, crazier things have happened. I'll say that much.
Right. And again, people are going to keep referencing the 14 points. Well, guess what? The Giants really had a lot more than, I mean, didn't have a lot more than 14, but they could have, right? Saquon Barkley never fumbles the football, fumbles inside the 15. That's at minimum 3 more. Probably
Dude, hyperextended his arm too, man, which is crazy. And you could see it. If you slow down, if you go to NFL.com and you watch the game, when he gets knocked out of bounds low, he tries to kind of like land on, you see the arm bend in an awkward, weird, gross, weird way. Luckily, he comes back in, because that would be the last thing the Giants need right now is a no Saquon Barkley.
No, he said that he thinks he should be fine too.
No, he came back in. He's fine. It's just like that could be really bad. We've seen devastating injuries happen.
Yeah. And so it wasn't. That was great. But yeah, man, it was an exciting. It's just good to, like, here's the thing. A lot of people, I don't care how you fan how you want to fan. If you want them to lose games so you can get your quarterback you like, that's on you. But I just, it was so much more exciting and so much more happier feeling and better feeling today with the Giants winning this football game in a dominant way, in my mind, in a lot of ways. Yes, it wasn't a dominant final score, 14-7. I get that. But this was a dominant win. They did 3,000 stupid things and still won the football game. That shows how out of hand the game was to begin with. Usually when you do all the stupid things the Giants did in this game from a turnover standpoint, you lose a game. They lost the turnover battle. But no, it wasn't this one. And then they had won the turnover battle against the Bills and didn't win the game. So it was kind of like
the Dolphins.
And the Dolphins, actually. You're right. And the Dolphins. And then that was another factor there as well. So it just felt better. It felt like this team has some kind of confidence today. I hope that confidence can carry over, Nick, because like I said, 4 of those 5 games, that's the blueprint right there. Win 4 of those 5, and it requires no margin for error. Yeah, of course. The Giants have dug themselves into a 1-5 hole. There is no margin for error. That margin is gone. It's long gone. It's been gone. That's the season. There's a no margin for error left season. They got to do it. But the way the defense played today, Nick, it inspires hope for me that they can get to that level. Because this win today, I want to end on this. Didn't this win today, Nick, feel a lot like any of their 9 wins really last year, with the exception of the Colts game? Like it really did, right? The defense dominated. They made some big plays, and ultimately they won on the line of scrimmage on the defense side of the ball. And Wink Martindale got his pressures there, and the simulated pressures got there. And that's, they won a lot of games last year too. We weren't beating teams 35-31, really.
No, we weren't really dominating many teams. I think we were second in close games behind the Minnesota Vikings, who are also struggling this season, because that's typically a stat that doesn't carry over.
Yeah, it usually leads to regression. But again, this schedule, man, I'm feeling good about it. We'll see what happens here. Hopefully they can carry over. Thank you to everybody for tuning in to the Big Blue Banter podcast tonight. Thank you to everybody who donated in the super chat. A big shout out to Bowman Klein, who donated massively to us. And thank you to everyone who donated and answered us asked us questions tonight. We will be back this week with film breakdowns as always. And Nick, I want to shout this out as well for those of you listening live. Nick is going to be on WFAN tonight with a friend of the show, Lori Rubenstein. She runs a show on WFAN. She's had me on. She's going to have Nick on. So I'm excited to hear that breakdown on 1:15 a.m. Is that correct? 1:15 a.m. Eastern time?
Yes, sir.
Which is nice for you, because she usually
I was making a face because you said her name wrong. You said good friend, and then you pronounced her last name wrong.
It's been a long day. What did I say?
You said Rubenstein.
And it's Rubenstein?
No, it's
Rubenstein. Rubenstein. It's Rubenstein. Oh my God, Lori, if you're listening to the show, I'm so sorry. Lori Rubenstein. That was just a mental block. And this is live, Lori, so you're just gonna have to deal with that. We can't even edit that one out. But Lori Rubenstein.
You idiot.
Yeah. It's been a long day, man. It's been a long, long day. And I think, I just had a mental block there. But Lori Rubenstein from WFAN. She's had me on. She's having Nick on tonight. What is that? 1:15 a.m., Nick, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's good for you, especially because you're on Pacific Coast time. So you don't even have to stay up late for that one. But hopefully some of you will stay up another, 45 minutes to listen to Nick on WFAN radio. You can find it live. And I think after, you can find it on the Odyssey app. So I'm not so sure I'm going to stay up. I haven't decided yet, Nick. I'm still beat from my trip. But if I don't, I'm going to listen on Odyssey in the AM.
There you go, man. Yeah, you can find it on all. That's why I listened to all yours, because you've been on there a couple times.
Yeah, man, we're getting some publicity here. Big Blue Banter on WFAN Radio. And thank you to everybody again for donating to the podcast and for supporting us. Everyone else, have a good night. We'll talk to you later. Offense film breakdown, defense film breakdown, maybe another mailbag, because that went really well 2 weeks ago. And it's kind of a good time for a mailbag. The vibes are feeling better, Nick. And then finally, a Jets preview that I'm going to be a part of, because I want to get a prediction in, because I missed this prediction, Nick, and I would have predicted a Giants win. I'm pissed about that. I lost the chance to predict the win. So
what would have been your prediction? Yeah. You missed a great conversation. Jamal's the man, by the way.
Yeah, I did listen to Jamal. Yeah. So I didn't get to the end with the prediction part, but I listened to as much as I could before the flight. And he did break down the Washington football team well. I was going to say, Nick, if I had to predict the game, it's so stupid to say after hindsight wise, but I probably would have predicted like 20-13 Giants. So it wasn't too close with 14-7, but a similar type of one score. But
I had 19,
I wouldn't predict the Giants dominate like they did.
Yeah, I think I had 19-17 is what I went with.
There you go.
Yeah.
They dominated this game. I know the score doesn't say it, but they dominated this football game.
I didn't think they would dominate that much either.
Right.
I thought the defense would get pressure. They would sack Sam Howell at least 5 times. I thought they were matching that, and they sacked him 6 times, got me more pressure than that. But I didn't expect Sam Howell to be this bad, because Sam Howell hasn't really looked this bad all season, even when Washington was losing football games. Maybe the Buffalo game, you could argue. Wink got to him, though.
Yeah, because even in some of those games he was bad, like Buffalo and Philly, he had those late fourth quarter adjustments and had some nice drives. Mm-hmm. Chicago, yeah. So they really did a good job getting the Howell. But anyway, thanks again for everybody tuning in. Have a great rest of your week. Listen to Nick at 1:15 a.m. on WFAN Radio. Talk to you later.